world society, it increased our power. This is why the tiny little island called Britain was able to take ships around the world and put trains everywhere, and it was because of our knowledge, our science, right? That brought a certain power. And the French, we use pouvoir, is the origin of the word power. What's the French word for pouvoir, for power?
La puissance.
La puissance. And in German it's Macht, might. Puissance, do you know the etymology of that in French? I'll look it up.
Puissance et pouvoir, it seems to get the same etymology, I guess.
Possibly, yeah. But what I've always said in my teaching is that pouvoir in French means to be able. It's about ability. So if you have power to fix something, it's because you're able to do it, and you have the knowledge to do it. So that's my understanding of what power actually is. It's ability and knowledge, ultimately. What we humans haven't yet got is the ability to fix our moral problems. We can't stop people lying, right? We can't stop people misusing their abilities, their pouvoir.
What's interesting is we see nowadays that car makers, they are making mistakes. Boeing is making mistakes.
Yeah, planes are dropping.
Because
the doors are coming off.
People have lost the faith in what they were doing. People that were entering the railway, it was kind of vocation.
Like a religion to be a good railway man.
Yes. And it's lost because the management has changed the rule, and only it's money, short-term view for money.
It doesn't have a long-term investment in the real engineering base that you need for that.
And the boss of companies, they are no more engineers. Exception is Musk, people. Maybe. Unfortunately, Musk is an engineer. So that maybe explains parts of his success. Because we agree,
I still don't know where he
we agree or not with
I suspect
his
it comes from aliens myself.
But when you see this guy, it looks like he has dreams and faith of what he is doing. Maybe it's a
wrong faith, like chipping people. But
he's powerful.
Yes, so that sort of, it's a big question, the future role that engineering can play in society in all its forms, and who's going to control that, who's going to own the code. If they chip us all, who gets to control that? And there are millions of dystopian sci-fi movies out there and novels, but all I can say as a philosopher to sum up is that human beings, going back to Livy, have to have the moral integrity to govern ourselves. This was Gandhi's point, satyagraha, to hold on to truth, which brings with it all the kind of basic rules of morality. Otherwise, we go down the route of Atlantis, which was the moral fable of the Greeks and Plato, that if a civilization loses piety and loses truth, it self-destructs. I don't want that to happen to the current world. I don't want to go down that route. And that's why I teach as a philosopher to remember the wisdom of the ancients. You asked, what is my faith? Well, my faith is that we will get there. I still believe in human beings. I believe enough of the divine intelligence is seeded in us to be able to get through these problems. We keep creating new problems, but then I think we come up with solutions. And, I'm a great lover of philosophy, and I've been to the park in Athens where Plato taught, the academy, and felt totally in awe, I've been to the place where Aristotle taught, the Lyceum, and talked to philosophers from all over the world at the World Congress of Philosophy. And I think that the one thing I did say to this young student is that whatever degree you do, because he also loves music and he wants to be a guitarist and, he wants to be into theatre and theatre studies. And he can't, he's not quite sure what he wants to do. So I said, whatever degree you do, actually all knowledge is interconnected. You can do a degree in any subject. It will lead you ultimately to the halls of philosophy. Because the greatest engineers, who've done some of the most pioneering works, they do so because they're also interested in art, in music, in philosophy, and it gives them ideas that they can come up with. So I think at that level, all knowledge is interconnected, and it's not easily won. The one thing I said is that you have to stick at stuff. Like discipline is the basic ground rule for mastery of any knowledge, be it engineering or music or philosophy. You have to actually plough through the fundamental texts and stuff. So, and that's a skill that I'm not sure many young people have these days, because it's so expected that everything's instantaneous. You can click on something and then you think you know it. That the ability to study for like 4 years intensely on stuff, is that something that we still have? Is that why planes are falling off Boeing? Why doors are falling off and stuff? Because I don't know. I hope not. I hope that that each generation can pass on that that core understanding of discipline. It's interesting, the word disciple that is used in the Bible of Jesus' students, disciples, is the same word as discipline. A disciple is someone who accepts discipline. And yes, let's hope there's a few of them left. Okay, having said all that, let's go on and look at our periodic table then. Let's use our chemical analysis of philosophical traditions. And we'll do one each, okay? I'll do one. Right. Okay.
In which box would you place Netanyahu in 4 Judaism boxes?
Yeah, I'd probably put him in 106, which is Satanism. I don't think he deserves to be in the box called Judaism because,
So we cannot say it's only Orthodox, which is the most strict view of Judaism or practice?
I mean, yes, but no, because the truly Orthodox Judaism, Netanyahu hasn't got a clue about it. That's about compassion and about love. If the true Orthodox rabbis would run a mile from what Netanyahu's done. He's a weaponized the state into terror and fear. He's created the enemy among Palestinians that were quite happy to have a two-state solution non-violently with the former leader who was killed by the Israeli state, poisoned, Yasser Arafat. And so they've created the very demons that they're now having to fight. Now, none of this is what an Orthodox Jewish rabbi would have countenanced. Okay. So no, I put him in Satanism. But choose another one.
Yes, I choose another one. The NRM Miscellaneous 119.
Okay. Oh, that's a good one. That's like the party bag with all the odds and ends you get when you leave the party. I'll do mine first because that chronologically comes first. I chose by divine dispensation Sikhism, philosophical Sikhism, 112. And that's quite interesting because one of the holy books that I've been listening to in my lockdown of sort of tackling texts that are so vast I never have time, is the Guru Granth Sahib, which is the Bible of the Sikhs. It's enormous. It's up there with the Mahabharata. It's like 80 hours of listening time. But I've been listening to it, on and off in the last year. And that's been a fascinating experience. I've been to the Punjab, where Sikhism came from. And I've been to Amritsar, the holy city of the Sikhs. Been to the Golden Temple, and I've immersed myself into Sikh language, culture, customs, and have had many Sikh friends who taught me in London, because there's a very big community in London of Sikhs, particularly in Southall, but also in the east of London, where I was based for many years. And I had one student in particular who came to my classes when I taught for the University of London, Surjit Singh, who was a Sikh, who, they're just such kind, amazing people. We travelled to the Punjab together, and he wanted me to meet his guru, who's like the living guru of the Sikhs, from the Namdari community, which is another box. It's box 118, but it's close to what we're looking at, 112, and I just experienced tremendous love and compassion and solidarity amongst each other. So Sikhs don't allow for huge class differentiations, extremely wealthy, extremely poor. Everyone is kind of middle class and gets by. And if you are really broke, somebody will help you out with a loan or a gift. I didn't see any, like the sort of poverty you see in the Hindu community with their caste system of extremely rich billionaire types versus millions of extremely poor people begging on the streets. That's against Sikhism. It doesn't happen in the Punjab. The Punjab is a wealthy, egalitarian kind of community. And that was specifically said in the teachings of Guru Nanak. He said, it's against God's law to have that, very rich versus very poor. And right from the beginning, they've been premised on that egalitarian model. The other thing that Sikhism doesn't allow philosophically, and there are passages in the Guru Granth Sahib that buttress all this up, and Sikh philosophers have been writing about this for the last 300 years, is that women have total equality with men in the Sikh community. Every Sikh, man is called the lion, Singh. So if I was a Sikh, I'd be Thomas Daffin Singh, because I'm a lion at heart. I'm courageous, I'm brave, etc. And every woman is Kaur, K-A-U-R, a princess, because every woman is sacred and a mirror of the divine on earth. I found this true. I've known Sikh men and women, and they have this natural egalitarianism, not because somebody in some written constitution says they have to, but because in their souls they know that they are divine, they are children of God, equally. They have slightly different roles in the society, but Sikh women can be engineers or bus drivers. And in Britain, they often are, So, the literature of the Sikhs is premised on the Guru Granth Sahib, which is like their Bible, which is such a huge book. I don't know that any philosophers ever analysed the whole text in detail and written commentaries on it. I won't have time in this lifetime to do so, because I've done a few others, like the Quran, the books of Enoch, the New Testament. I wish I had time to do the Sikhs, but I'll leave that to others. But what I would say is that, so one of the interesting things about life and philosophy is reincarnation. At what point in the cycle of knowledge do we is there anywhere to go? Is there a final end point? What is moksha? What is liberation? What is nirvana? That's Guru Nanak started with that question. And he taught a particular way of reaching that point, like fast. He describes it as listening to the sound current, listening to the Naam, listening to the name of God, plugging into it. And if you learn that technique, it shortcuts 100 million lifetimes of suffering, he says. So, how do you do it? We want to know, right? Well, the idea underlying it, and this was taught in the Namdari circles. This is what the Guru knows, and he taught me, as it were. It's the same as tuning into the basic shabd, which is a Sikh word, the sound current behind the universe, silence. If you can tune into that within yourself, in meditation and prayer, you realise that it is the sound current behind the universe, and it's the sound of God speaking. So God is creating the entire universe right now, and we can tune into it in our innermost spiritual inwardness. And so when you do that, you shortcut the world of suffering and the chasing. Okay, so what the Guru Granth Sahib doesn't like is fake desires. I've got to have 10 Rolls Royces. I've got to have salary commensurate with my CEO status. I want 4 million a year, 4 billion a year, whatever. None of that. That's all ego. Just accept, what you need. God will give you that, and give the rest in charity, is what Guru Nanak said. And he also went on these amazing pilgrimages. He was a pioneer of the interfaith world. He would love this periodic table, because he was born into a Hindu family, but he was raised to have great honour and respect for the Muslim community as well, and he absorbed both. And maybe one of his parents was, maybe he was a dual marriage. I can't remember the details, but he lived in a particular part of the Punjab. He was born in what is now Pakistan, and my friend in Pakistan is organising tourist trails for Sikhs to go and visit his birthplace and everything. There are holy sites for the Sikhs in Pakistan. And he said there's no distinction between Hindu and Muslim to the surrendered soul. And there's a famous moment in his youth when he was growing up, sort of reaching manhood. He disappeared into a river and then came out saying this famous statement: there is neither Hindu nor Muslim. There is ultimately the surrendered state, which is beyond the labels. And that's what he taught all his life. So anyway, the Guru Granth Sahib is, a lot of his sayings have got into it, which are very, very deep and profound. He went on pilgrimages to north, south, east and west, like any self-respecting philosopher. He went to the far north, the Himalayas, Tibet. He went to the far east, to what is now Burma and places like that. He went to the far south of India, and he went to the west, even as far as Mecca. We know that he went on pilgrimage to the Muslim sites. He regarded himself as a Muslim, as well as a Hindu, as well as all the others. He didn't know much about Christianity. I've looked in the Guru Granth Sahib for any evidence of, had he read the Gospels, what does he say about Jesus? He didn't really know much about all that. But I'm sure that had he known, he would have honoured Christ as a surrendered soul and his brother. And I know Sikh Christians today who've married the two traditions, as it were. Deep stuff. And then after him came a succession of 9 other gurus, down to Guru Gobind Singh, who then declared there wouldn't be any others, there would just be the holy book, the Guru Granth Sahib, which is in every Gurdwara or Sikh temple in the world. And as we're speaking now, it's being read from in Amritsar 24 hours a day by a succession of priests. And it's beautiful. You walk across this place to the island in the middle of this lake, and that's where the reading is taking place, which I did. Yes. So, and I've also been fortunate to be invited to the Punjab, the university, where they inaugurated a chair of Sikh studies. So I met some, contemporary Sikh scholars who are studying the philosophical meaning of Sikhism. So there's a lot of deep stuff here that, that is, I think, a banner for peace. And when the British got to India, there were some communication difficulties between the British and the Sikhs for a while, and we fought a number of wars together. But eventually we realised we were probably talking about the same kind of stuff, and made a peace agreement, and we respected each other after that. So the British Sikh community have been living in Britain happily, and I think that's a good thing. May it flourish, and I hope that the values the Sikhs believe in. They were staunch supporters of Indian independence, non-violently. They, Guru Nanak said, use non-violence if you can, but if you have to fight, then fight justly and moderately and not in a crazy way. And he trained up, Guru Gobind Singh, the last guru, trained up Sikh warriors to be pretty stern and strict. So they've often been the backbone of the British Army, in fact, in World War I and II. And when I went to Brighton, where I was brought up, the Royal Pavilion was turned into a hospital for Indian soldiers wounded, and there were lots of Sikhs who were being nursed there. There were photographs on display, which is interesting. And my mother, who was born on the 1st of January 1914, just before that war, she was featured in an exhibition about famous Brighton people from the past, what have they done with their lives, and that was very moving. And that's where I saw about the Sikh people in the Royal Pavilion, which is a beautiful Indian-style palace used by Queen Victoria in Brighton. So, yes, may there be peace on earth. Okay, and by the way, Sikh simply means a student. So we're all Sikhs in the sense that we're all students, right? It's not really its own religion, although it's got its guidebook. It's more a journey or a process towards enlightenment. Anyway, that's a report. The next one, let's look at the one you mentioned, which was
NRM at 119.
Yes. New religious movements. Gosh, miscellaneous. Well, that's huge. How long have we got? Because the new religious movements category is fascinating. It's often not included in. I mean, if you study religion at school, you're not taught about this thing. But I came to it much later as an academic, realising that there's this field called new religious movements in comparative religion as an academic field, and there are journals and courses and degrees you can do in that, and it's fascinating. And so the miscellaneous one would look at things like A Course in Miracles, which is a particular book channeled. It's in 2 or 3 volumes. I have a copy of it. And it purports to be from Christ, channeled by an American psychologist working in a hospital in New York, she'd never been particularly religious. She was not, a person of faith, but she suddenly would awake in the middle of the night with these thoughts in her mind, which I think she dictated to her husband or a friend or something, and he wrote them down. And it grew into a course of, many teachings, which basically give the person that works with them the ability to work miracles through right intention, faith, and so on. It's supposed to be a kind of message sent from Christ from above, because he's constantly doing miracles, but he didn't really teach anyone how to do them himself. So the Course in Miracles is sort of an appendix to the New Testament. Christ saying, this is how you do it. Now, many people swear by this. I used to meet them in the 1980s in London, 1990s. They were all studying the Course in Miracles. And it is classified as a new religious movement. More generally, we can include all the literature called channeling literature. So what we talked about last week, the knowledge book by this Turkish woman, Bülent Çorak, and we had one of her friends here, that counts as new religious movements, as a miscellaneous item. The reason I did it with that is I couldn't have a box for all of these. It would make the thing too big, right? And there've been lots of channeled books. Alice Bailey is another one, although I gave her her own little niche in new religious movements under, she's in the esoteric column 125. But I also put in new religious movements the question of spiritual healing, which is like a new religious movement. And that would include, there's a whole tradition going back to the 18th century, people like Mesmer in France, and the ability to use mind to heal people. I also include geomancy, which is an ancient practice, both in the West and the East, about sacred energies, earth energies. People talk about this. When I was in Wiltshire, I went to the Museum of Crop Circles, which exists in midway between Stonehenge and Avebury, because crop circles are an interesting new religious phenomenon that have been happening for the last 2 decades, where these strange patterned, complex geometric shapes appear in wheat fields, with the wheat stalks are bent, but not, there's no knowledge of how they happen, and they're so complex, and there's different theories. Anyway, this museum tells the different theories and has photographs of them all. I've been into one of these crop circles once, when I lived in England, and on a beautiful summer day, and it was a very interesting experience, like a religious experience, if you want. So I suspend judgment. Some people say they're fakes, they're done by people at night with boards tracing it. Other people who studied it say, no, that's not possible, because some might be, but there are others that are so complex and they appear overnight, it's just not possible. So is it sort of alien spacecraft coming in from invisible dimensions and sending rays down that do it? Who knows? It's an interesting field. And then there's, of course, the question of psychic archaeology, which is another phenomenon I'm interested in, where certain psychics claim to be able to plug into the deep past and find objects and see what ancient civilizations looked like. People write books about, I was viewing ancient Egypt, or Edgar Cayce would come into this. He was able to tune back into former lives when he was in Atlantis and so on. Rudolf Steiner to an extent also. So, I suspend judgment on all this. It could be... one thing I did do is I did try and make sense of it all. I bought every single book on Atlantis I could in the bookshops of London, and tried to make sense of all the New Age psychic channelers about Atlantis, and none of them seem to agree. The timelines are all different. The location is different. The basic moral is the same, which is be good, don't annoy the gods, but everything else was different. So I've gone back to Plato. I think it's an allegory, and I think looking for the actual Atlantis is a bit silly. And I think that the actual Atlantis, if it did exist, which I think it did, it was actually the ancient prehistoric culture of the Magdalenian culture of France and Spain, which extended way out into the Atlantic, because the sea levels were much lower in those days. So about 15,000 BC, you could walk from northern Spain, Basque region, all the way to Ireland and not get your feet wet. And I think all that land that then was flooded in about 10,000 BC, that was the downing of Atlantis. And I think that these ancestral peoples of Northwest Europe who experienced that's what they call the Atlantis flooding. And I think that tradition, which is historically provable, was what Plato picked up on in Egypt, because there would have been that news of, God, there's been a catastrophe, thousands of acres have gone flooded, we must have offended the god of the sea. Or, I think that news got to Egypt by then. Anyway, that's my historical explanation. But so that means that all the people like Edgar Cayce that channel what happened in ancient Atlantis, I think they're slightly deluded. But it's fun. Before Netflix, what did people do? They went on, illusory journeys back to Atlantis. And they still do, by the way. Gaia TV is full of all that stuff. The lady that channeled Course in Miracles was called Helen Schuchman. And anyway, there's lots more. There are other people that follow angels that think we should all channel into angels. Fintorn is big on that. They have these angel cards they give out, which I have a set of. And I think this is fascinating. Parapsychology is another kind of branch of this, which is people looking at the Institute of Noetic Sciences in America, in California, does this. They're a bit more grounded in that they're trying to do scientific research around this stuff with things like telepathy and even past life regression. I mean, you can study it scientifically, you don't have to just accept it on faith. And it's that cusp between faith and science that interests me, which is why I've been working with our friend from last week to try and set up a group that will study channeled material, but do it rationally, you know, and examine the contents and say, is this possible? Is this factually correct? Because there is a danger people can be led astray by false material, you know, and therefore I think we need to bring critical reason to bear on this stuff. Anyway, that's my take on that one. Any questions, comments?
No, thank you very much. Especially for the Sikh discovery, I didn't know about them.
Okay, well, you know, I guess there aren't that many here in France, probably. Probably in Paris, there's a small community, but not here in La Creuse. They're amazing people. Okay, let's do our gods,
Okay.
because we like our gods. And we think that they're going to help us, I hope, as we try and navigate out of this crisis we're in as a planet. I'll let you do the first one.
Hermes.
Oh, jolly good. We like Hermes. Merci. On dit Hermes en français?
Yes, like the brand of...
Perfume.
Yes.
Yeah, Hermes. Okay, in English we say Hermes.
Oh,
Different pronunciation.
Hermes.
Yeah, but it's the same god.
Like her.
Yeah, Hermes. Yeah. Hermes. Ah. Okay, well there we are. We've got two that are quite close actually. They come up from time to time. So Hermes will do first. The 6 of air. And let's see what page it's on. He's also called Mercury in the Roman pantheon. You see, what I don't understand, the Roman officials insisting you worship the Roman pantheon. If you were an intelligent refusenik, you would have said, yeah, but hang on, like half the Roman pantheon are Greek anyway. So, you know, and loads of the Greek ones are pinched from Syria and Africa. So I'm worshipping all the gods anyway. So why can't I smuggle in the Trinity or Yahweh? Aren't they part of the story? And at this point, they would have probably got so frustrated they wouldn't have just let you go. But anyway, so yeah, Hermes is he's the god who was associated with Thoth in Egypt. And so that's a fascinating thing. We don't know who or why or when Greek settlers in Egypt, intellectuals, allied Hermes and Thoth. I don't think anyone's ever yet explored that because it's lost in oral history. Because it's a strange sort of connection in some ways. Thoth, the lord of knowledge, learning, scholarship and writing, and Hermes, the messenger of the gods. But when you go into it more deeply, I think you can see the way that they would have thought that Hermes, as the messenger of gods, is the source of all channeling. So the new religious movements we've been talking about, he's the guy sending the messages down, right? Because the gods are too busy to do it direct. They send it via Hermes.